Hey y'all, welcome to this week's show. First of all, I apologize that it is late. It was absolutely out of my control. We seem to have had a small terrorist attack. Yeah, for most of the day, I had no internet, I had no phone, I had no, obviously television, cable, and all that. Not a big deal, obviously, not a big deal. Gosh, I mean, an ice storm or hurricane will knock stuff out about annually in North Carolina, no matter what side of the state you're on. But as many of you know, I have been dealing with a family issue in Moore County, North Carolina. Now, Moore County is right, I don't even know, 20 minutes away from Fort Bragg. It is the city where more retired military officers live than anywhere else in the United States. It's considered the home of golf in America. On any given day, the place is full of millionaires. President Trump has an interest in the golf course. I mean, it's not a normal place. And I've had to spend a lot of time here over the past 3-4 years. That's why, I had to quit doing plant walks, teaching herb classes in person, been invited to a lot of events, to speak or to teach, and I've had to apologize and say, I can't, I'm dealing with something. I'm not going to get into details, but let's just say me and my family could use some prayers. What we're dealing with is not good at all, and getting progressively worse, and it will get even worse until it's over. So I think you can fill in the blanks, but I was the only grandchild. I'm the only child, the one that has to do when things have to be done, and that's all there is to it. And then, of course, last September, just a few days more than a year ago, this week, the hurricane just basically trashed my house up in the mountains. I mean, I still got no power or water. So things have not been good. I'm struggling. I'm doing the best I can. But, if you follow me on Twitter, you might have noticed I've been a little down lately. Well, there's a reason. So, prayers would be appreciated. And, it is what it is. It is what it is. But in the years, I have had to come in and out and spend a lot of time, especially around holidays and such, in Moore County. There have been 3 terrorist attacks, if today counts. Seriously. I mean, Thanksgiving, 2 years ago, I guess, someone shot the power station, put the entire county in a blackout in cold weather. And, I mean, it may not sound like a big deal. And like I said, we have bad weather, but this was an intentional act. And there were issues at the hospitals and nursing homes. People have to have electricity. They had to get their generators going and everything, and some of the extended care communities. From what I understand, there were some deaths, so it was not. And people at home, on oxygen and stuff, there were some deaths, and so it was. It may not sound like a big deal, but it was an intentional act, and they still haven't found the culprit. They think the same person did some stuff out in Washington State, and other places. It seems to have been an intentional terrorist act, and that's the thing about North Carolina, especially in a resort area like around Pinehurst. Things don't really get reported on because they want to sell real estate and get people coming in for vacations. So, like, a nuclear bomb could go off and it probably wouldn't make the 6 o'clock news. And if you think I'm kidding, remember about, I guess, 20 years or so ago, there was this giant theft of dynamite in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. Enough dynamite to blow up like 10 city blocks, and it never even made the national news. This was like right after 9/11. This was, to this day, I'm not sure they've ever found it. I mean, North Carolina will sweep something under the rug, and the national news acts like we don't even exist except at election time. So anyway, after that legitimate terrorist attack on the electric grid in Moore County, there was in the northern part of Moore County, up around Carthage, if memory serves, like I said, there are tons of veterans here. Tons. Just about everybody's either active duty or retired. Well, a special ops guy, I think he was retired, sees some, if I remember correctly, and you'll have to double check me on this. He saw a bunch of guys in like electric worker uniforms that did not seem to be with the power company. And he started, I guess, filming him with his camera, and they tried to kill him. They started shooting at him. And it turned out they were a bunch of Muslim immigrants from a foreign country, obviously, from a Muslim nation, here again in the heart of military country, up to something. And it was reported on very briefly in local media. They tried to shoot him, and then they were found to have some storage buildings, probably with some weapons in there, but nothing else was ever reported. When you're in the county, store or something, you talk with somebody, and they're like, yeah, we had a terror cell right here in Moore County, North Carolina, and whatever happened, I don't know. It was never reported. There was no follow-up. That's pretty darn common around here. And then, last night, somebody went and cut a fiber optic cable at like 4 in the morning. And here's the thing. It wasn't just like they cut a random fiber optic cable. It was in sort of like a hub, from what I understand. And it took out internet and phone and new, cable and all that for almost the entire county, and seems to have crippled Spectrum Cable's operations to a large extent in North Carolina, in an area, an hour out of Raleigh, an hour and a half out of Charlotte, and like 20 minutes out of Fort Bragg. Is something happening? I mean, at this point you have to wonder, is there an organization feeling out the infrastructure? Because, I mean, this should be like the safest place in eastern United States, because this is literally where like millionaires and retired colonels and generals live. Walter Reed, you've heard of Walter Reed Hospital? Yeah, he lived down here until recently. I think he passed away. If he's still alive, I'm sorry, to the family. This is like super, it's nothing to see motorcades. I mean, you get in here the most high profile VIPs in the entire United States. This is Moore County, Pinehurst, North Carolina is on par with any of the top destinations in the world. And yeah, foreign dignitaries. I mean, yeah, there have been many times that there have been people in here, you know, politicians or royalty from other nations, U.S. Open, big things, right? And somebody can just go out and cut a fiber optic cable. Somebody can just go out and shoot at the power station and put the county out of power for a week and a half or so. Somebody can just go out and start shooting at a special forces vet and apparently may have had weapons in a storage facility and they were foreign nationals. And it doesn't even make the statewide national news. Now, that ought to scare you. And what it really ought to do is make you very aware. It ought to make you very aware. You don't know what's going to happen. I mean, told you before, you know, kid I went to high school with, a year or two older than me, goes to an ATM, pulls out 20 or 40 bucks, somebody went and shot him in the head. I mean, you know, that was back in the 90s. Recently on I-95 in eastern North Carolina, everybody's been on I-95 in eastern North Carolina, going through Robeson County, Lumberton. Somebody didn't like something, you know, somebody maybe unintentionally cut somebody off in traffic. They opened fire and just shot and killed the mother, and, you know, it was horrible. You never know when something like this going to happen. So I really want to, before I get into the herbs, and I will talk about an herb today. I promise this will be an herbal podcast. It's going to be a short one, though, because I'm exhausted. You never know what could happen. You don't know when the power's going to go out. You don't know. I mean, okay, so today, okay, they just cut a fiber optic cable. You know what? I got my cell phone. We did at least have cell coverage. Nothing other than that. Even though there are like two competing cable companies down here, none of them seem to have any kind of internet access, even on your cell phone. I called down to the grocery store, local grocery store, and I said, you know, I know we're having an issue with cable outages and such. I just wanted to make sure you could process credit and debit card payments. And they said, no, we can't. He said, we can take cash. And he said, but, you know, you can't get cash from an ATM machine right now. So if you got cash in your pocket, you can come down and get some groceries. He said he thought they were going to get their credit card system online, but the debit card system was down. So, I mean, it seems like nothing, right? But I imagine if they couldn't process cards at the grocery store, and this is a major chain, they probably couldn't process them at the gas station. Were people able to get gasoline to put in their cars? If someone's driving and they ran out of gas, were they stranded? You know, just, you got to be ready for stuff like this. And, you know, adjust myself in a chair and get a sip of water. I tell you, this has been tiring. Mainly because it's cumulative. I've been through situations before when hurricanes come in, power's out, you couldn't use an ATM, you couldn't use the gas pumps, you had to pay cash for everything. You know, learned my lessons the hard way in many instances. I do a lot of my content for so-called preppers, and I think preppers get a bad reputation in the news media and popular culture. Like, you're looking for the zombie apocalypse, or you think you're going to have to fight a war with the government. It's going to, you know, preppers aren't, you know, most people are just like me in the prepper communities. They've been through a hurricane, they've been through an ice storm, or they've been out of work for a while, and they realize that something can happen at any time, and you need to store some food, store some water, some medications, have fuel to heat your home, just real practical stuff. My point to you is you never know when it's going to happen. And one thing I'm going to start doing with my YouTube channel is I'm going to call it Judson Carroll Bushcraft and Woodcraft. I'm not going to call it prepping, because YouTube could flag it. You know, YouTube's not anything associated with the conservative movement, let's put it that way, and prepping does tend to be, even though there are many liberal preppers, it's not, exclusive to any ideology or people in the middle that just don't have an opinion whatsoever. It tends to get associated with like fringe right-wing stuff. Honestly, we got to be a lot more concerned about fringe left-wingers these days than we have anybody on the right. But YouTube tends to limit availability to certain content. I experienced that during the COVID lockdown. They went after me for just, or I can't remember if it was YouTube or Facebook, but they went after me for just making fun of Dr. Fauci. I've been there before. So I'm not going to call this like something for preppers, even though I do a podcast through the Prepper Broadcasting Network called Herbal Medicine for Preppers. I'm going to call it Judson Carroll Woodcraft and Bushcraft. And I've already put a couple videos up, even before this happened, just about certain basic survival things I carry in my pockets on a daily basis, like a pocket knife. Yeah, pocket knife comes in handy for like 1,000 things. A cigarette lighter, or a ferro rod, some water purification tablets. Maybe you haven't thought of that before. But what if you're stuck out on the road? What if your vehicle breaks down? What if you're stuck in a snowstorm? And that's happened, an ice storm, and that's happened to me before. I could have gotten some heat to melt snow to have water to drink, or I could go to a creek and get some water and put in an iodine tablet or a chlorine tablet. Those are things that a lot of people don't think about. An emergency Mylar space blanket. Anyway, that'll save your life. You can do a million things with a Mylar space blanket. They cost about $3. They fit in your pocket. And you just unfold it. It will hold in your body heat. It will save you from shock. It will keep you from going into hypothermia. You can use it as emergency shelter. It's shiny. You can signal for help with it. Just little things I just like put in my pockets. So check that out, my YouTube channel. And like I said, it's under Judson Carroll Woodcraft and Bushcraft, because I'm also going to do what we call more woodcrafty type things. I'm going to show you how to carve spoons and make baskets. And it's all going to be very practical. It's not like zombie apocalypse stuff. But I think it's really, really important, because you never know. I woke up this morning. I was actually up till 3 a.m. dealing with stuff last night. Issues. And I woke up this morning about 10 o'clock. I thought, I'll check the news and maybe I can get to Mass, and turned on the TV and it didn't come on. Went to call the cable company and there's no dial tone. Pulled up the internet, there's no internet. Cell phone only had like 3 bars, so I was lucky to even be able to use that. And if it had been a hurricane, the cell towers would have been down. And all that could have happened in the blink of an eye, but at least I would have had a little warning. You just never know. That's why, to me, it's so important to know herbal medicine, to take care of yourself. Literally, even here in like the most unnatural environment I can tell you, it's nothing but golf courses and manicured lawns. There are pine trees. I can stop bleeding if I need to. I can disinfect a wound. I can help, treat a sore throat. There's oak trees. I can stop diarrhea. There's sassafras. There's prickly pear cactus. Just look. There's daisy fleabane, erigeron, excellent for so many uses. Mullein grows just about everywhere around here. There's dogwood that would help with a fever, and tulip poplar, ditto. Antiviral property. Having a working knowledge of herbal medicine means that wherever I am, I have the medicine I need at hand. Now, if I was in a really extreme environment or a very foreign environment, I'd have to learn the plants in that area. But 99% of the time, wherever I am, I can find the medicine I need at hand. You really do also need to prioritize. Remember, shelter, because you can die of exposure faster than anything, except first aid. You can bleed out or have diarrhea that'll kill you. But, I just said that in herbal medicine. Next to that is shelter. And then fire, to stay warm or to signal for help or to cook food or to sterilize water. Then water, because you can go longer without food than you can water, and then food, and you get those basic things down, and you don't have to think, well, I'm going to be stuck in the woods. To me, that's my default, because I've spent most of my life in the woods. I mean, I love to hike and hunt and fish and a whole bit. I love to be in the woods, but even at home, stored water, stored food, fuel, a backup way to have heat, a backup way to cook. These are very, very practical, very, very practical things. A knife to cut things, blankets, candles, a radio. I mean, these are things you need. Yeah, so, there's only cable here. So I needed to know about the news. I found an old battery-operated radio. Well, I mean, it had plug too, so I plugged it in. We didn't lose power. In the past, I've had to use batteries, of course. So that's, in my mind, I'm still in the mountains where when anything happens, the power goes out. But no, the power stayed on here. So I plugged it in. I found a local channel. But you know what? It was Sunday. Good luck on getting any live news on a Sunday, especially a Sunday morning. It's pretty pathetic, actually. So I had to wait until in the afternoon, and I could get just a few little updates. But really, it was more using the cell phone, and I was able to call somebody who could go to the website. It's ridiculous. If you call in to the cable company and you say, my cable's out, they say, go to our website and check for updates. Well, you can't do that when the internet's out. and there's even the cell phone is not connecting to the internet. Whatever towers were down, they must have been on the same network. I had to find somebody I could call or send a text to check a website, to send me a message to tell me, expect the communications basically to be back up by 6 p.m. That was cool. Wasn't that way 2 years ago when they shot out the power station and everything was down for a week and a half. And we're just sitting, in a dark house with daytime temps getting up to about 40 degrees and nighttime temps getting into the 20s. Furnace won't work. Electric lights won't work. I grew up this way. So I had battery-operated radio, battery-operated lantern, battery-operated, probably something else. Something was, flashlight, of course. I had candles. Get those big prayer candles. The ones that have like a Catholic image on there. They'll burn for like 12 hours. Get some little tea candles. Even those help. Sterno fuel. I keep things like this on hand. Some stored food, some smoked sausage and beans and onions and various things that, you can throw together and make a meal for a few days. And fortunately, we had a gas fireplace, so we were fine. Other people were not. Other people died. So I just always want to say, be prepared. Have 3 to 5 ways to do everything you need. I'm serious. If you got matches to start a fire, that's great. What if it's windy and wet? Have a cigarette lighter, have a ferro rod, have a magnifying lens, a Fresnel lens, whatever. Have 5 ways to start a fire. Have 3 to 5 ways to get water, if possible. That would be, my word, this leather chair is squeaky. That would be nearly impossible in Moore County because the water is not clean. The ponds, the creeks, the rivers are absolutely fouled with runoff from both runoff from golf courses and landscaping, but also there was a chemical weapons plant here that became a Superfund site, and is really deadly. They don't tell you about that either. But so what would come down to water? If you didn't have municipal, you'd have to rely on rainwater. That's crazy. You can't predict when it's going to rain. So I told my relative, let's store, at least 5 gallons of water in case the power goes out, in case there's flooding from a hurricane. Just have 5 gallons of water. And, no big deal. Does it take up a lot of room? Think ahead about things like that. It's not paranoid to prepare for an unlikely scenario. These days, after the shooting on I-95, I mean, I'm the most docile driver you can imagine. I don't do anything to upset anybody. If things might happen, I might have a certain weapon in my pocket and a nightstick, a billy club under the seat. You know, I'm prepared. And it's because it has happened, it's not unreasonable. I really avoid ATMs after what happened to the kid I went to school with. Have for decades. You can go to the grocery store or the post office or something and get cash back. If I can help it, do not wish to pull up to an ATM at a bank. If I do, I look to see who's around. I try to do things quickly and efficiently and get out of there as quickly as I can. You know, you may think that's paranoid, but, you know, literally, senior in high school walked up to an ATM, got his brains blown out for 20 or 40 bucks. You don't know. You just never know. And, you know, as human beings, the normalcy bias says that tomorrow is going to be like today, and that's the only way we survive in this world. But we also have a logical mind, and it's a good thing just to think, you know, maybe I need to stock up on this. Is there a medication I need on a regular basis? Maybe I need to get a little extra of it and just stick it back. You know, some things you have to put in the freezer, other things are fine just in the medicine cabinet, right? Do I need some Band-Aids? Do I need some alcohol? Are there a few things I need if I can't get them? You know, during the pandemic, the ridiculous thing was toilet paper. Everybody went out and bought up all the toilet paper. And then there was no more toilet paper for a few weeks until they restocked and everybody was freaking out. Probably wouldn't be a bad idea. I mean, you never know if that's going to happen again. Next time you go to the store, buy 2 packs of toilet paper and stick one back. Don't put off common sense things. Never let your vehicle get below a quarter of a tank of gas, ever. Yeah, and certainly you probably can't keep it at a full tank. Good if you can. When you hit a half tank, go refuel. That's just a habit. You get into that and you never have to worry. Like I don't know, 10, 20 years ago when the hurricane came in and knocked everything out and I had to go from one side of the state to the other and the gas stations were closed. That was bad. That was really bad. I had to take some cans of beans and soup and such and go to a grocery store and return them for cash and then go pay for gas, which the gas was going up by the minute. You know, in an emergency, gas will double in price in the blink of an eye because of demand and also because of, price gouging. I literally had to cash in some antique silver coins that I had been saving that I had inherited just to put $20 worth of gas in the tank. And I'm talking like $400 worth of coins. In an emergency became $20 worth of coins. So don't think when they're on television tell you, buy silver, buy gold, buy Bitcoin or something like that. When the power's out and there's an emergency, things are worth what somebody's willing to pay for them. And I got ripped off. I got screwed horribly. But I had no choice. I had to get from one side of the state to the other because of a family issue. And I didn't have cash on me. That's, God willing, never going to happen again. Put some gas in your tank. Put some dollar bills in your pocket. And don't think I'm safe because I've got gold sitting in an account somewhere that I've never even seen. Most people don't buy physical gold. They have certificates saying that someone else is holding that gold for them. That's worthless in an emergency. I mean, that's less than worthless in an emergency. That's a liability in an emergency because you want to protect, you don't want somebody else to get that account number and all that kind of thing. But even physical precious metals and such, pretty much worth pennies on the dollar if in an actual grid down situation. You need to have real folding money, dollar bills, 10s, 20s, whatever. If you don't have cash, forget it. You can't buy a bottle of water. You can't buy a gallon of gas. You better have some cash on you. And if they ever get rid of cash, we are in big trouble. We're in huge trouble because you're not going into a 7-Eleven or a grocery store and bartering with a gold coin. Not going to happen. I mean, legally, they're not even allowed to take them as currency. But even so, they're going to give you pennies on a dollar. I mean, you will walk in there with $500 worth of gold and walk out with $5 worth of gas and a bag of chips. Don't ever get suckered into that complete, utter bullshit that is marketed by most conservative outlets. Gold may be a wonderful hedge for a long-term investment. You need cash. And if you don't have cash, you need something you can trade. You know, I remember when I was down in Athens, Georgia. This was way back around year 2000 or so. There was a bad ice storm, power was out for a while. You know what people did? They traded cigarettes. Smart people who didn't even smoke went out and got cartons of cigarettes the day of the storm because they'd been through it before. They knew what was to expect. They bought cigarettes and they bought liquor. And these were non-smokers and non-drinkers. Why? Because 3 days later they needed food. They needed anything you can think of to survive. And they could take a pack of cigarettes and they could go down the street to their neighbor or whatever, or a bottle of whiskey or whatever, cheap vodka, it doesn't matter. And they would trade that for what they needed. Those were very smart people. I learned that back in, I don't even know, 1999, 01, somewhere in that era. You may remember the big snowstorm, the Snowmageddon or something that came through there. I think that was a couple years later. Actually, this was an ice storm. But yeah, common sense, black, white, rural city people, first thing they did was buy all the cigarettes and alcohol they could get. Not because they were going to use it, but because they could trade it. In an emergency situation, you can't eat a dollar bill. If someone's willing to take cash, that's great. They're going to take cash far more likely than they're going to take credit. But you can certainly trade for something to eat. And if you got somebody that wants to have a drink or a smoke, they'll trade. If they're used to it, maybe even addicted, you can deal with that later. But right now, if you need a cigarette or a glass of vodka, hey, you got some dry beans on you? You got some salt? I mean, you need salt to live. Never forget that. Always store salt. Store salt and store water and store some oil, some kind of fat, and then add into that your carbs and your protein, because those salt, water, and fats are essential for survival. You cannot live without them, regardless what anybody tells you. But yeah, be very practical in that regard. Day 4, day 5, day 7, day 13, you start seeing some things you don't want to see. People robbing and stealing, attacking other people, selling themselves on the street. Yeah, I mean, very quickly you will see prostitutes that were never prostitutes before are now out on the street. And all they had to do was go buy 2 cartons of cigarettes. Something to think about, maybe a little unpleasant to think about, but I've been through it too many times. I don't even know how many hurricanes. I don't even know how many hurricanes in 48 years, how many ice storms, how many snowstorms, and now 3 terrorist attacks back to back in 3 years. And what are the odds that I would have been? They always seem to happen on a Saturday night in the fall. Maybe law enforcement ought to look at that. All right, y'all. So a little bit on herbs. I'm just going to do prickly pear. I'm going to do sable, palmetto. This is not a plant that likely grows in your area. It does grow in the coastal swamps of North Carolina, but you barely ever see it. really until you hit about Beaufort, South Carolina, where there was a mass shooting last night. So again, these people went out to a restaurant or a bar and didn't come home. You cannot predict anything. You have to be aware of your surroundings, the people you're around. I mean, Southport, North Carolina, barely 2 weeks ago, some nut just pulls up sails up, I guess, in his boat and opens fire on a bar. I don't know. Things are, that's one, not only can you not predict, things are going from bad to worse. And sometimes it's politically motivated, sometimes it's just a lunatic, and sometimes there may be some psychological programming that has happened. I don't think it's a coincidence that so many of these mass shooters, whether they were liberals or who knows what their politics were, transgendered or not, I mean, really, a lot of them have been veterans. I suspect strongly that there has been some infiltration in the psychological health aspect of some of our veteran services. Can I prove that? No. But there does seem to be a pattern, and, while I have the utmost respect for our military, it's also very regimented and could easily be infiltrated by someone with bad intentions if they wanted to, and you get a bunch of people with PTSD and put them on psychological drugs and antipsychotics and antidepressants and put them through all kinds of behavioral training and counseling. If the wrong person had hold of those controls, it could be really bad. And I'm not sure that hasn't happened. So, that's just another. But see, the thing is, at the end of the day, we can't control any of it. And where I'm going to tell you to be prepared with herbal medicine, and I may tell you to keep your pantry stocked and some water stored, you also need to be spiritually prepared. No one knows when their time's going to come. I also do a podcast called The Uncensored Catholic. I have a second newsletter. So every morning I send out what I call gospel reflections. They're the mass readings of the day. One excerpt, usually the gospel, sometimes something from the Old Testament, but usually the gospel, occasionally a psalm, whatever the mass readings are for the day, and I give you my commentary. I'm not going to preach at you, but I would at least encourage you to take a look at it, see what you think. Send me an email if you can't find it, judson@judsoncarroll.com, southernappalachianherbs@gmail.com, but you should be able to find it. Maybe knowing that any minute our number could come up. You want to take a look at things and try to set them in order. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm going to say. But that's another aspect of preparedness. Now, sable palmetto, or palmetto, there are 4 varieties that have been found useful in herbal medicine. Scrub palmetto, Mexican palmetto, bush palmetto, and cabbage palmetto. Only one shrub form variety is native to my area, and that is dwarf palmetto. As I said, this gets far more abundant once you get down to the southern part of South Carolina, going into Georgia and Florida. But it may grow in your area. The palmetto is actually the state tree of South Carolina, and there are various varieties. The Plants for a Future says, medicinal use of cabbage palmetto. The berries and seeds have been useful in the treatment of grass sickness. I'm not even sure what grass sickness is. You'll have to look that up. Also for low fevers, headache, and weight loss. Now, saw palmetto is also in the same family, and it is very good for prostate inflammation. You absolutely want to look at that. The PDR, Physician's Desk Reference for Herbal Medicine, says, in human studies, saw palmetto's mechanism of action in the treatment of benign prostatic hyperplasia, enlargement essentially, May have multiple sites of action and involves an anti-androgenic and anti-testosterone and estrogenic properties. Saw palmetto has historically been used as a treatment for prostate enlargement and chronic cystitis, as well as a mild diuretic. So the palmettos, they often call them palms, but they're like small palm trees, very unique in their form, have various uses. Diuretic, good for bladder infections and cystitis, but especially for prostate enlargement. Also have traditionally been an invaluable source of food, especially food in emergencies. So look into your palmettos. If you don't have one in your area, maybe you can grow one. If you have specifically an issue with prostate enlargement, what do they call it, BPM, or I can't remember, look into getting some saw palmetto. And you may also want to look into pumpkin seeds, which also help. So, short segment on herbal medicine, long segment on you never know what the hell's going to happen, and try to be prepared for it as best you can. And remember, check my YouTube channel. I have free herbal lessons on there. I have free guitar and mandolin lessons on there. I have cooking lessons on there. I do a lot of stuff. But I am starting to do this kind of very practical, very, very practical, if for want of a better word, prepping videos. Like I said, it's Judson Carroll, Bushcraft and Woodcraft. I've got Herbal Medicine 101. Just look for Judson Carroll on YouTube. And please do sign up and share it with friends. I'd really like to grow that audience. If I can get my audience on YouTube to the same size it is through my podcast, I could actually make a few bucks off of it, which would not be a bad thing at all. I mean, the Bible says the worker is due his pay, and I put a lot of time and effort into this stuff. So share it with friends, family, and loved ones, and please get in touch if you have any questions. Practical common sense is all I'm talking about. And man, I mean, you just never know what you're going to wake up to in the morning. You never know. I mean, I remember the terrorist attack 2-3 years ago on Thanksgiving. It was the night before Thanksgiving. I took my dog out for a walk. I'm down at a relative's house. Walked down the street. Everything's just nice and pleasant. It's a little cool. I'm thinking, all right, this is going to be all right. It's going to be a good Thanksgiving. We'll roast a turkey and, it has the cranberry sauce and everything. Make some dressing. Everything you're looking forward to. And boom, everything went out. Everything went black. Just walking down the street. And everything went black for like 100 miles in every direction. There was no Thanksgiving turkey the next day. There was no oven to cook it in. I mean, there were a lot of people that were hungry the next day because that's exactly what they planned on. Well, at least, in my family, we've been through it before. We tend to plan ahead. There were things in there that could be cooked in the fireplace, soup and sausages and beans and various things, and we were all right. We survived a lot better than most people, a whole lot better. People died, and you just never know. So, y'all have a great week, and I'm going to talk to you next time.